Welcome to Tripodcast, episode 272. It's Monday, January 28th, and Dick Ollek says, "The devil made me do it. What's your excuse? Are you taking business as it comes, or do you have a plan?" That's what this Tripodcast is all about, the virtues and simplicity of building a good business plan. Let's listen in.
Those of you that have been around for a while may remember a TV show back in the 70s called The Flip Wilson Show. And it starred, you guessed it, Flip Wilson. Now that took a lot of intelligence on my part, didn't it? But it was The Flip Wilson Show, one of the greatest comedians that I ever knew. But Flip, played a number of characters on his variety show. Among those were, you may remember, Geraldine, who was always telling people that her boyfriend, Killer, was going to get him. He also played the Reverend of the Church of What's Happening Now, Reverend Leroy of the Church of What's Happening Now. He seemed to have a strange approach to what a reverend was supposed to do, and his skits were with all his characters were just really hilarious, and I hated to see that show finally end. But I mention it because things were always going wrong in his skits, and when they did, he would say, "The devil made me do it." It was an easy cop-out for everything that went wrong. If those of you that watched that show may remember, it was always, "The devil made me do it." And so let me ask you, what about you? Anything going wrong in your business today? I'm going to suggest that everything may not be as you want it, but I'm also going to suggest to you that the devil didn't make you do it. Most of us, including me, seem in our business career to forget what our business plan is, and that's what the gist is of this Tripodcast. A business plan. Do you have one? If you do, dust it off and read it again. And those of you that don't have a business plan may be saying, "See, I'm not so far off track." Well, shame on you. Remember that old saying that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Or like Yogi Berra said in one of his famous sayings, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. You can take any fork in the road, it'll get you there, but you don't know where you're going. Back to my original thought, though. You need to have a legitimate business plan to follow. It's critical to be constantly reviewing it, not changing it willy-nilly, but changing it if you really need to. And I want to offer you a couple of consequences, I guess you would say, of not having a business plan or not following the business plan or adopting a change. I had a friend back in the 80s, a really good friend of mine, just lived in another state, ran the same kind of business that I did, and his business wasn't moving along quite as fast as he wanted. We had started our businesses about the same time in the same year, and our business was growing quite a bit more rapidly than his, and we were, in fact, he was in a city larger than I was, and he was cleaning a retail store in a city which also happened to be the headquarters of that retail chain. And he'd become really good friends with the regional manager, and that regional manager offered him an opportunity to clean an additional 25 stores. And my friend called me just all excited that he was going to be given this opportunity to make a big leap at this time that would put his company really up there. And he asked what I thought. Well, I didn't want, he was so excited I had to temper myself a little bit. He asked me that, and so rather than just tell him what I really thought, I started asking him questions in the hopes that I would get him to think the process through. I asked questions like, well, with each store requiring 2 auto scrubbers, who would be responsible for purchasing the auto scrubbers? And he said, well, I have to buy them or I have to lease them. Okay, so that's 50 auto scrubbers. I asked him, well, with you having to buy or lease 50 scrubbers, would the chain be signing an agreement that if they would purchase them in the event that they would cancel for any reason? And his answer was, no, they won't. So, in other words, if you lose this contract at some point, you'll have 50 auto scrubbers. Yes, that's right. Do you have the available staff, I asked him, to take on 25 stores at one time? And the answer was, well, he'd be able to find them. And you've probably answered the same way at one time or another in your career. I asked him if he had the available cash flow to fund such an undertaking. Because he's probably going to have to make the first 3 or 4 payrolls, pay the lease or bank payments on the equipment. And he said, well, I'm sure I can get the customer to pay 1 month in advance. Well, the answer is the customer didn't pay him 1 month in advance. And I asked him, what about all the other supplies and equipment you're going to need for the startup, like mop buckets, mops, vacuums, floor finish? He said, well, I'm going to talk to my supplier. And I asked him, well, how does this type of an account fit into your long-range business plan? And his answer was, what business plan? I mean, it really was. What business plan? So, and I'm sure I had other questions, but those were the major ones, and I thought that I thought of at that time. And I wanted the best for my friend. I really did. But I didn't feel that this was the best for him and his family, and I didn't think the devil was making him do it. And I didn't say, don't do it, Ron, but he did it. And he made the jump, excuse me. And within 6 months, the regional manager, friend of his, changed jobs, and he had a new boss who had a friend in another state to which he awarded the contract. And my friend was devastated, and this was not the time to say to him, I told you so. I did the best I could to console him, but we both watched his business sink into bankruptcy. I don't think the devil made him do it, but he had a solid business plan and a direction that he was going, this account would not have been in the plan, I am sure. And it broke my heart to see Ron just sink into oblivion because he wasn't planning. Now, a story about myself and how we made a decision to add 1 new paragraph to our business plan. Didn't make many changes to our business plan in our entire career, but this is one that we did. In my early years of my business, we were cleaning a manufacturing plant that represented about 75% of my total volume. It was a good account. It was a profitable account. And early one morning, I received a call that because of a looming business reduction, we needed to reduce the cleaning to 1/3 of what the original budget was. So, ouch. That smarts. Boy, did it ever. And even though everyone at the customer's place of business knew what was happening, we spent a lot of time explaining the new specifications and that were being implemented and how everyone would be affected. Like this large manufacturing plant over 60 or 80 acres, going to dump the trash every other day. Well, as you can always imagine, the calls always came in that you didn't dump the trash, and it always came in, well, we weren't supposed to dump the trash last night in your area. Oh, I didn't know that. Anyway, attempted to go into a whole new story of how to handle major cutbacks by customers, but I'll save that for another podcast, Tripodcast. We accomplished what they asked, but it wasn't without a lot of internal budget cuts we had to make, and frankly our bottom line really suffered. But the lesson we learned there is just because you've got a business plan doesn't mean it doesn't need to be altered from time to time, and that doesn't mean that you just do it on a whim, but it does mean you have to keep it dusted off and keep reviewing it. And we made one change at that time, and that was at no time will one customer be more than 10% of our total revenue. Now, there were times in our history where we took on large customers and we bumped up as far as 12 or I think 13%, maybe was as high as we ever got. But that just made us work harder to find more business so that we didn't, so we got that percentage back in line. And I sure slept a lot better through the years knowing that I could lose my biggest customers tomorrow and still have 90% of my revenue. Now, in either of these real-life adventures that I've relayed, I don't think the devil made us do it. So, I suggest to you, as you're watching this, when you get through, if you don't have a business plan, start developing one. Review it often. Make intelligent changes as the times and the economics dictate. Don't get caught up in the excitement of being offered an opportunity, that doesn't fit what you do best. Hope this has been helpful, and I thank you for watching.
You've been listening to a Tripodcast, short video and audio presentation about important topics in our industry. If you're a current subscriber to the Tripodcast, thank you. We appreciate it. If you're not yet a subscriber, please check it out. It's free and it's easy. Come to www.tripodcast.com, enter your email address on the right-hand column, and click subscribe. We'll send you out a new Tripodcast every Monday morning.